Welcome to Sports, Clicks, and Politics with your hosts, Ben Hussong and me, Shawn Hannon. Welcome to episode 137 of Sports, Clicks, and Politics. I'm Shawn Hannon, joined as always by the charming and handsome Mr. Ben Hussong. Mr. Hussong.
Yeah.
How was your extended weekend?
Great.
Like as a vacation weekend?
Ish.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess today's a holiday. It counts.
Is the shop open today?
The shop is open today.
All right. Well, it's a beautiful day, so maybe some people will stop down for some refreshing ice cream.
Delicious ice cream.
Yeah.
Yes. We hope so. That would be great. My weekend was great. However, it was literally all day Father's Day was spent just doing yard work. That was all I wanted for Father's Day, was all my kids to come and help me. And we got the lawn cut, trees trimmed, weeded, weed whacked, got the chicken run fully assembled, got it all predator-proofed. Nice. I mean, it was all day working. Our kids were shot by the end of it, and they're just looking at me like, this is what you wanted to do? Like, we have no time. This is the one day where we could just clear it out. So I was like, I just want you guys to help me and no pissing and moaning. That's it. That's all I want for Father's Day. They were halfway there. Like there was some pissing and moaning. Well, we put an end to that.
Nice.
How about you?
I had a little shindig at the place yesterday.
Nice.
Graduation party. They're low-key, mid-afternoon kind of thing. But other than that, quiet. Did some thrifting.
I don't know what that means.
It means we go to places with cheap stuff, and the other half there tries to buy stuff for 50 cents and sell it for $5.
Smart.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah. Little side hustle.
Nothing wrong with a side hustle.
No. The last side hustle turned into her to me being a dog walker.
I mean, you're good at it, though. You are good at walking. I've seen you do it.
All right. Well, before we get into some,
Can I make the obligatory, you're better at it than the president is? Like,
oh, yeah. Well, thanks.
Sometimes they write themselves.
Low bar. Before we get into some of the news topics of the day, I want to remind everybody to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, wherever you may be listening to us. Leave us a 5-star rating review. That's in the podcast form there. But we are doing the live show over on Rumble, as always. No shortage of news to put into the show this week. I had a full slate by Wednesday of last week. I was like, I'm thinking we're going to have a 2-hour show, but we're going to try to do as best we can to keep it in that hour-ish. Peter Hotez is now a common name among all the peoples of the world. Twitter was freaking great over the weekend. That was one thing I like Joe Rogan Twitter. I don't know if it was the RFK episode specifically, and we'll get into all this later. But I heard him recently say, he's like, I don't do Twitter. Like, he's like, I don't get on Twitter. He's like, basically this is Rogan talking, saying how he doesn't like, he doesn't try to get into that. He's not trying to, but he was all about it this weekend. And I think he did okay.
I think he came out relatively unscathed.
Yeah. I don't know this whole 2024 thing is going to be crazy. It's so far away, and it's so it has so much energy already.
I know.
Oh my God. You know what also has a lot of energy, Mr. Hussong?
What has a lot of energy, Shawn?
Are you familiar with Campi Flegrei? I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correct.
I am not.
Because if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, you really have no idea.
Yeah, I'm totally lost.
It is a super volcano in the southern tip of Italy.
Uh-huh. Did
you know the town, and I'm going to butcher this town name too here. Where are we? I'm over here. Pozzuoli?
Sure.
The
Love
town of
place.
Pozzuoli has risen nearly 13 feet. The whole city.
That seems wrong.
About 4 inches a year over the last decade or so. So from resulting magma that is building underneath this volcano.
That seems bad.
Yeah. So this is from the UCL, which does volcano research, and they basically are trying to measure. They're trying to use a model, so let's all be nervous,
skeptical.
Yes, all those things on how rocks break. Right, so this is they're using this on this volcano specifically for the first time. They're like, okay, we're trying to measure how we predict things, and so this UCL group has said that it's at a breaking point. So if their model is right, that the rock there should be some kind of rupture, and that rupture could or may not present a magma danger to the town of Pozzuoli.
I don't think I'd live there anymore.
And all the other people around.
I think I'd move.
Apparently, I think I read this, and maybe it's in the same article. Here's like 360,000 people, live on. It's a caldera, so 360,000 people live on the roof of this volcano.
I feel like that's not. You're not going to get great resale value, but probably somewhere there's an idiot that wants to live on top.
I mean,
of a volcano.
If you're just going to do a live cam, that'd be pretty cool. Think you could monetize that enough to buy like a little shack there in Pozzuoli?
Yeah, but you don't want to be there when that.
No, it's a camera.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So you just monetize it.
Sure. I
just wanted to put that on everybody's map, on everybody's radar, and in everybody's universe, so that when this thing, you start hearing about it in a little while, that you're preparing.
13 feet?
13 feet, yeah. Wow. 4 meters. There's the joke in here, is like, because it actually says, the article is, tens of thousands of small earthquakes have occurred during these periods, and the coastal town of Pozzuoli has lifted by nearly 4 meters, 13 feet, roughly the height of a double-decker bus. That's their measurement, double-decker buses.
It works, I guess.
Yeah, whatever. I thought that was funny. Anyway, so Campi Flegrei, probably not funny.
No, that seems bad.
Yeah.
Like that seems, I'm not a geologist, but man, that seems to me that would be some cause for alarm. Yeah.
Do you think it all rose like evenly?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I don't know how it would.
What if one side of the basketball court was a little higher than the other?
That's where your mind
goes. One side would be way easier to shoot on, the other would be way harder, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's correct.
All right. Let's talk about something else that's terrible.
Oh, good.
This actually happened as our show was on the air last Monday, but I didn't have any way to slide it in here. But J.P. Morgan agrees to pay survivors of Jeffrey Epstein $290 million. So this is not, let's not confuse this with the U.S. Virgin Isle case. That's still going. So that, fingers crossed that some people will get
arrested,
held accountable for actions of monsters from that case. But nobody's going to get held accountable in this case. There will be $290 million dished out to the victims. Now, this stems from a Jane Doe case who sued J.P. Morgan, basically, and this is the settlement has derived from that. But, they already have a Deutsche Bank settlement, too, and that number off the top of my head, I can't remember now. So these banks knew, or at least they
should have known.
Well, the fact that they're settling means that they knew, or they're just trying to get out from underneath, as much damage as possible. But, fingers crossed that this other U.S. Virgin Island case continues. I still think that's the best bet of actual, like, holding, power responsible for this. Like, that's the only, other than that, I just don't see another path forward. So if they escape that, they escaped. But you brought this up to me, and only because this, it's been a back and forth. So J.P. Morgan has now sued Jess Staley, the former CEO of J.P. Morgan, basically because they're like, okay, well, the entity J.P. Morgan didn't know Jess Staley was a slime ball, or as big a slime ball as, he wasn't whatever. And so now they sued Jess Staley to try to recoup that. But then J.P. Morgan's also like, well, U.S. Virgin Islands, the governor, the first lady, I don't know if that's the right term of the governor, the wife of the governor was basically facilitating Epstein's operation and helping him avert punishment and writing sexual trafficking laws.
Getting his input on how they were writing child trafficking laws, be like, will this be acceptable to him if we word it this way?
He had the final approval of how the wording was going to actually.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. So they're all monsters, right? So, I mean, maybe the fired U.S. Virgin Islands prosecutor there, the district attorney who brought this case forward, who got fired by the new governor, maybe she's not a monster. But like, these all people are all in bed with each other. They're just pointing. It's that Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other, being like, "You're the guy," and they're all the same. They're all monsters. So anyway,
my God.
All right. Now, this is something we haven't really covered. My next little topic here, not directly anyway. We've talked about this reporting, and we've talked about specifically Revolver's reporting. Let me see if I can get this over here. Revolver, you remember they did a deep dive on the Ray Epps, and they kind of did a whole January 6th kind of expose about all the people, all the major players who were involved in this. And part of their investigation was the placement of 2 pipe bombs, one at the DNC and one at the RNC, right? So this article stems from a committee where the Darren Beatty, who is the editor of Revolver, sat down with my boy Thomas Massey and developed a line of questioning for FBI agent Stephen D'Antuono.
Yeah.
Yeah. That dude is also like the Forrest Gump of the FBI. He was in charge of the Governor Whitner kidnapping thing. And then he was part of he came out and was like, I don't think we handled this Mar-a-Lago raid of President Trump's documents things, good. Like he kind of came out in defense, or not in defense of Trump, but like was like, hey, I don't think we're doing this right. But anyway, so this guy finds his way into all the craziness. But here he is again. He was charged with the pipe bomb investigation. So I don't know that I think I have more. I think I have still unanswered questions even after reading this. So there's 2 pipe bombs. Both of them were set up with hour-long timers. And this is all according to this article here in Revolver. Former head of FBI J6 pipe bomb investigation comes clean with stunning admission. I don't want any conspiracy theories, right? So like, nice title.
Revolver does great investigative reporting. They got to work on their headlines.
Yeah, it's a long, but
yeah, that's way too much.
So this guy, this is all what I'm kind of paraphrasing here is all from his testimony to this line of questioning from Thomas Massey and I'm assuming it was the Weaponization Committee. And he was the field agent or like the head of the Washington field, so the DC field office for the FBI, this D'Antuono guy. So he's questioned, and they're talking about the pipe bombs. And the pipe bombs were made in a way where the timer was an hour-long timer.
Yep.
They were placed on January 5th at like 7:40 p.m.
Okay.
So
how do they know that?
17. They have my camera.
I know.
Yeah. So 17 hours before the whatever happened at the Capitol building, these pipe bombs are placed with an hour-long timer. So in this testimony, he's like, okay, I don't think these ever could have gone off because they only had this effective, the timer would only go off for an hour. And so if they're placed January 5th at any time, doesn't really matter. If they detonate at some point at 8 p.m., there's no tie to there's no thing with January 6th. It's not a thing. But if they're found conveniently 10 minutes before they're supposed to go off or 20 minutes before they're supposed to go off with a timer that says they're going off in 20 minutes and they're found at 12:40 p.m. on January 6th, an hour before the election results are supposed to be certified, and the whole, right at the end of Trump's speech and when the Capitol building is finally breached, seems coincidence. So these, and let me make the timeline clear for these people. So these were placed on January 5th, the evening of January 5th, set to look like they were going to detonate in 20 minutes. And so when they were found at 12:40 p.m. on January 6th, it looked like they were going off at 1 p.m., exactly the time of the certification process and 10 minutes before the west end of the Capitol was breached. And so Capitol Police respond to this. They're there by 12:50. And wouldn't you effing know, Mr. Hussong, at 12:53, Ray Epps is the infamous leans over and whispers to that dude in his ear, sweet nothings, and he immediately storms the gates. So that's the diversion hypothesis.
It's just coincidence.
But so
hang on.
Go ahead.
All right, let me just back this up a little bit. I just want everybody listening to understand what you are expected to believe happened on this day. All right. So at 7:40 at night, the night before, a mysterious individual drops pipe bombs outside of the RNC and DNC headquarters. Nobody notices, nobody catches it. Great. The perpetrator definitively has a cell phone on his person. And I'm going to use him because, let's face it, most pipe bombers are men. So I'm going to roll with the idea that this was a guy. So he drops the pipe bombs.
Now, this is film released by the FBI.
Right, where they said, see, we got evidence. This is the guy dropping the pipe bombs. And he has a cell phone clearly in his hand at one point during this time. So he drops them with a kitchen timer set to go off in 20 minutes that therefore can't set off the bomb because it's not going to. So we're expected to believe this guy just, despite taking all of these steps, was so incompetent that he wanted to blow up the RNC and DNC headquarters at 8 p.m. at night with nobody there, but he didn't do it right. He didn't set the timer right. But, when 8 o'clock came and went and nothing exploded, he didn't go back and, try to see what happened. He just was like, well, change of heart. Okay. Then, because, of course, our government has demonstrated that it is not shy about doing what it calls geo-tracking, where they can look at your cell phone off of various cell phone towers, and they can pinpoint your exact location, which is how a lot of the people, the protesters, the rioters, or whatever you want to call them, that were present on January 6th got caught. Now, to those of us who are a little bit more individual rights-based, this seems like an enormous invasion of the Fourth Amendment, but they seem to be okay with it, and the general public has just accepted it. So if the guy has a cell phone in his pocket, in his hand, at the exact time, at the exact location that because it's on tape, and they asked, hey, how come you didn't geotrack this guy? And they said, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Huh. So again, I'm expected to believe that even though you geo-tracked thousands of people the next day, the one where you have him on camera in a location with a cell phone, you can't figure that out.
Yeah, here's that referencing that right here in the article. It says, according to Jim Jordan, Congressman Thomas Massey asked D'Antuono whether they attempted to identify the pipe bomber via geofencing.
Geofencing, I'm sorry, I said
and received the following answer. The data was corrupted. The telecom company, just by sheer coincidence, happened to lose the data for that particular place and time. So this is obviously Revolver writing here. But so that was the answer given by D'Antuono when Massey was asked that, yeah, we asked for that, but the data was corrupted. Kind of like Epstein's cameras.
It's so weird that they left off the warrant, set everything down to go get the warrant, and then it was gone when they got back.
And to piggyback on top of that corrupted data, there's two cameras. Were they in the DNC placing of the DNC pipe bomb? There's two cameras. FBI released a bunch of video and say, "Hey, we're looking for these people." But when they did that, they released first of all, the video one, I think it was, according to the Revolver article, could have shown the pipe bomber actually placing the bomb. But that part was never released. So the full unedited version of video 2 was released, but it's kind of obscured by a bush or a shrub or something that's kind of in the way. So you don't actually get to see the actual bomb being placed. But if they just released video 1, the angle is different and you would see it.
I'm taking this in the light most favorable to the FBI. What they said is that's how they knew it was a pipe bomb place, because they had him on camera.
Sure. I'm just saying it's weird that they just wouldn't release the unedited version. It might not even be because they actually see the pipe bomb. There might be some other incriminating evidence that is displayed during that part.
So,
and just to your point, and I'll let you go. The one video they showed is 1 frame per second. It's like, what? What are they doing? It's like an old video game where you're like,
yes,
like the guy is like literally going like,
yes,
slow motion. Like, it's so stupid. So clearly they haven't released, and this is what Revolver has been asking for, an unedited raw video of the thing. Hey, let's see what happened. Maybe we could help identify this guy. If you would actually not show us some grainy ass 1 frame per second video, you might actually be able to catch him. And to your point, they would have video and they would have the geofencing data, and they would have the guy.
Of course they would. It's just like a no-brainer. But it's weird. It got corrupted. Nothing they could do about it. Just just bad luck. So then we are expected to believe that of all the times that they could have found this thing the next day, with people coming and going, you assume out of the RNC and DNC headquarters, given the mood of the day and the events of that day, that, I don't know, maybe the two primary political parties and their DC headquarters would have some activity with the certification of an election and the overthrow of our democracy at stake. So, but conveniently, they just so happen to find it set to 20 minutes until it exploded at 20 minutes before the election certification was going to happen. Weird. Again, that's the...
But here's where it gets weirder, right? So the RNC bomb was found supposedly by just some random woman. Like, everybody knows she was apparently doing laundry, went out to switch her clothes and saw the pipe bomb and was like, this is weird, and called something in. Now, the DNC one was called in minutes after the RNC one was called in. So it's almost like as soon as they was like, oh shit, this is, somebody found it. So maybe this lady found it.
Tripped it up early,
right? And kind of messed them up a little bit. And then they had to kind of move a little bit quicker.
Sure.
But it seems as though the storyline fits seemingly that this lady found it accidentally.
It's awesome.
But conveniently, the DNC one was literally called in minutes later.
Right.
Like, oh, we found them both. They found neither one of them for 17 hours. And then they both found within minutes of each other.
You know, I fully believe this. And then on top of it, with more things I can believe, despite having protesters out there all morning, despite everybody chanting and shouting and yelling and protesting and whatever else you want to say all morning, at the exact time that the Capitol Police leave to go investigate a pipe bomb, they happen to breach. Yeah. 3 minutes later. I mean, wow. What luck if you happen to be set on rioting that day. And it's, again, Ray Epps walking right up to a guy, whispering in his ear, and then that guy turns and breaches for the first time all day 3 minutes after they found a pipe bomb.
Yeah.
I mean, guys, I'm sorry, but if you're skeptical about this, you're definitely a conspiracy theorist. Like, you got to be an idiot to think this is all not natural and the most likely course of events. And on top of that, who are we to question the FBI? I mean, they have just never given us a reason to think they might lie, exaggerate, plot, get caught, screw up their own plots,
I didn't even
cover things up.
I had an abolish the FBI segment today, but I just couldn't fit it.
I mean, this sounds like
to talk about the
reason.
super volcano.
Uh-oh. Well, yeah, the super volcano was way more important. But the FBI is, like, the idea that this is how stupid they think we are. Like, yeah, this all makes sense. Shut up. And I'm going to talk about this to people that are going to tell me I'm nuts and are going to laugh at me about this. And I'm going to go, look, you believe it if you want to. I don't know how many times you can get lied to and just keep on going with this. I can't anymore. I can't pretend like this makes any sense. Yeah. I get it. You hate Trump and you want all these January 6 guys to be in prison for whatever because you think they tried to overthrow democracy. First off, you don't really think that. Our democracy was never in danger from the dude with the bullhorns, okay? Like, it wasn't going to happen.
What about the guy who tased himself to death through his ball sack? Was it ever in jeopardy? Was our democracy in threat?
All the way around. Or the guy who, like, put his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk. Or the guy that stole the podium, which you still can't tell me was not Cole Beasley. It was definitely Cole Beasley who stole that podium.
Anti-vaxxer, Cole Beasley.
See, it all fits. Look at how it all comes together. Somebody get his geofencing for that day, please.
Yes. All right. So, listen, I don't know. This weaponization committee hasn't really, nothing has materialized into any, like, tangible anything yet, but, like, they're definitely stoking some smoke and some fire and stuff. It's fun.
Listen, here's my only request, I guess, to the people that are still on the team FBI. Okay, if you're not all the way to abolish the FBI yet, can we at least stop taking them seriously? Can we just let them do their thing, but maybe take every single thing they say with a grain of salt? How many times do they have to get caught plotting their own plans that they then break up or get caught and they end up going anyway? Like, how many times does this have to happen before you go, maybe the fact that there was 15 informants and one guy with autism who tried to kidnap Governor Whitmer, maybe that wasn't like a one-off. Maybe we ought to be a little bit skeptical. And the guy that was running that operation then got promoted after it came out that all this happened. Like, maybe it's time that we don't need to take them super serious. Maybe it's okay to believe that they occasionally fib.
Yeah. I mean, if there was ever an organization need to fucking unplug that shit and plug it back in, it's the FBI.
God, you got to reset at this point.
All right, so that's not what I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about the Bidens.
Sure.
So this actually, we could have, there was just enough information where I could have brought this up last show, but I kind of was hoping that more stuff was going to come. And
my God, did it ever?
Yeah. So, Burisma. I mean, do we need to talk about them really more? Or backdrop of this is the company that basically had energy guru Hunter Biden serve on its board.
Yeah, Burisma is an energy company out of the Ukraine with very close ties to the government, and whose founder has been a notorious source of corruption and bribery across the Ukrainian government and is well known. And this is the company that was being investigated when they reached out to noted corporate ethics expert Hunter Biden and put him on their board along with somebody else. Archer or
Devin Archer.
Son,
I think Devin Archer might have been
Devin Archer. And they both got board seats. Now, I don't know the numbers offhand for Mr. Archer, but they were paying Hunter Biden $83,000 a month to be on their board.
Up until 2019, too. This was not long ago.
And then Joe Biden, who was the vice president and, quote, spearheading U.S. policy in Ukraine at the time, end quote.
I.e. the de facto president of Ukraine.
Correct. And, Joe Biden went over and he bragged about getting that prosecutor fired that was investigating them for corruption. And then I love the official narrative of they fired him because he wasn't going after them enough. Right. If there's anybody I'm ready to give the benefit of the doubt to that you are just the beacon of virtue and honor, it's Joe Biden. Obviously, he was concerned that the company that his son was a board member of wasn't being investigated diligently. Like, do you people hear yourselves when you say this stuff out loud? It's crazy. And just again, for comparison, because I do think this is important, $83,000 a month for a corporate board position is insane. ExxonMobil pays on average about $19,000 a month, and they ain't exactly a beacon of corporate ethics themselves. Burisma is at $83,000 a month for the vice president's son. And everybody's like, yeah, totally fine.
Yeah, I think most people recognize that it's probably...
They ain't paying him that for nothing.
Right. They're like, okay, well, we get it. They're like, they need to do that because that's how stuff works. And whatever. But people, you're just accepting...
blatant in-your-face corruption.
Right. And so it turns out let me see if I can pronounce his name, Mykola Zlovchevsky.
You nailed it.
I'm pretty sure I did. Burisma founder, Mykola Zlovchevsky. Basically, this is quoting a thing he said. It would take 10 years to unravel the complex payment of path that led to Joe Biden. But,
you mean the 87 LLCs he has set up? No, that's totally normal for a public servant, you guys. Stop it.
But apparently, Mykola Zlovchevsky says he has 17 recordings implicating the Bidens in a pay-to-play scandal. That is the founder of Burisma. Apparently through, and this is going back to the headline of this, the Bidens coerced Burisma to pay $10 million in bribes, says credible FBI source. So we've been talking about this FBI. I had hinted to you that it was my boy Gail Luft. I was like, I think this might be Gail Luft, and then I was going to be like ahead of the game here. But it turns out that the guy who is the FBI informant is the actual Burisma founder, Mykola Zlovchevsky. And he, to save his ass, recorded 15 meetings with Hunter Biden and 2 with Joe Biden.
Now, this is an insurance policy.
Right. Like, if you're like, and as you point out, the dude's a scumbag. So, like, all right, if one scumbag's trying to get leveraged by another scumbag, that person knows how to cover their ass, right? Like, and get it out to the... We'll see how this all plays out. Like, again, Biden's still the president right now, so I guess he could...
It's wild. If this was anybody else, any other time in history, this would...
If Trump never existed, and it was just some other random Republican who just happened to win and beat Hillary, and it wasn't such a visceral, personality problem with the Trump thing,
right?
I think most people would be like, okay, Biden's terrible now. We got to get this guy out. And he would be impeached already.
Right. And he should be. Like the guy you now have on top of, let's not forget about Tony Bobolinsky still out there, flat out saying, yeah, Joe Biden is the big guy who's collecting 10%. And I've got the documents to back it up. FBI interviewed him for about 5 hours and then never contacted him again. Great job, guys. You
can't believe Tim Tebow would do that.
I know. Tim Tebow, what a dork. Not the football player.
He's a great man.
Anyways, so you have the guy who apparently has the recordings. Now, I haven't heard the recordings. I assume you haven't heard the recordings. They have not been released yet. But 17 is a pretty specific number to have of like, it's not I got multiple. This isn't Adam Schiff going out on MSNBC and saying, I've seen evidence you haven't seen, and Trump's definitely guilty of Russiagate. And then he, under oath, is like, nah, I haven't seen anything. Like, this seems to be that this guy is relatively credible.
Yeah, and he went through the FBI channel. So this is the guy, Zlochevsky, who is the foreign national whistleblower that filled out this FD 1023 form with the FBI. And in that form, he says, I have recordings of Hunter and Joe Biden. Now, that specific part was redacted when the Weaponization Committee asked for those documents from the FBI. Chris Wray gave him redacted versions, and the redacted part was the note that he has recorded recordings of the meetings with the Bidens. So that's when Christopher Wray was held in contempt by the Congress. Basically, they're like, okay, we're going to hold you in contempt unless you give us this unredacted thing. So that's still trying to play out, I think, right now. But that is the specific note that was redacted, according to Chuck Grassley anyway, the Senator Grassley from Iowa, I think it is. He's the one who said, hey, I've seen these unredacted documents already, and when we asked you for them, you gave me a redacted version of why would you redact this part, which is the note that I'm assuming Mykola Zlochevsky has recordings of him and Biden's. And I want to hear the recording so bad.
I do too. I can't
Do you
wait.
think Biden's like, he's probably coherent still?
Nah, if Biden was lucid, he'd be losing his mind right now. But
Yeah, but these are years ago, right?
at that point he was.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So,
like if they told him right now, he'd remember for like 8 minutes, and then sun would set and he'd forget again, and you'd have to tell him. Imagine being the one that has to break this to him like every other day when he can't remember, and you got to tell him again.
what's that movie with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore? It's like a
50 First Dates.
It's like 50 first presidents over and over again every day.
50 Bad News Days. So I just, like, again, if this is true, and I guess here's where I'm going to operate under the assumption of it's probably true. And I'm going to tell you it's probably true because we have been looking into, we've just read the news articles that most people don't about the Biden history and the Biden family, and it's just a legacy of lying and corruption. This isn't new. This is just par for the course. Like, the idea that Trump was a Russian asset always struck me as kind of ridiculous. Of like that.
I mean, listen, if there was a P
sense.
tape, I would want to see that. Too. I mean, not see it,
makes
but
one
like,
of
I
us.
want to know that it's out there. I would like to, right? You know what I mean?
But it always, everything just felt so fabricated about it. Of like, look, and we made the point more times than I can count. I think the term ad nauseum is appropriate here. Of Trump just kept getting criticized for the wrong things. Like, he did so many terrible things that he never got any blame for, and then everybody was going after him for this nonsense. The Biden crime family is a real thing. Like, this is crazy when you look at how much corruption and self-dealing and how many witnesses there are and how many people are willing to come forward with physical evidence that, like, Tony Bobulinski was the one making money off of this deal who said, yeah, 10% was going to Joe Biden.
Yeah, and he, you know, his resume checks out impeccably. Right. So.
And it's not a coincidence. You got the text messages off Hunter Biden's laptop that seem to indicate the same thing. You got all of these pieces of the puzzle that are there that, no, I'm not going to tell you there's a smoking gun, although if these recordings really exist, I would say that's about as close as you're going to get to a smoking gun.
Yeah.
The fact that the chief accountant of Burisma mysteriously died.
I mean, it's funny to me that, you know, the whole Trump impeachment was about him calling Zelensky, being like, hey, I heard Biden's corruption in your country is kind of pretty standing. You know, maybe we should look into that a little bit, whatever.
I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah. And then he gets impeached literally for the Biden corruption. It's, you know, for calling it out because, I don't know, he wasn't president or something shit.
For irony fans, it's a pretty amazing.
It is mind-boggling. And just that, you know, the cherry on top in this whole article is that Zlochevsky was worried that when Trump got elected that the investigation was going to out him, right? And so, and this was, according to Zlochevsky, $5 million to Hunter Biden, $5 million to Joe Biden. So, I mean, I'd like to see those tapes for sure.
I do too, but listen, even if you just have the slightest bit of discernment left, even no matter how much you hate Donald Trump, this is a family that legitimately had something, except I want to say it was like 30 separate LLCs established for various purposes.
Totally legit.
Guys, I own a few businesses. I have a corporation and an LLC and a partnership. That's it. Like, and I'm pretty on the up and up. I don't work in public service. I'm not I'm not a politician. So if you're just a politician and claiming public service and you've been a senator and then a vice president and then president, what kind of side deals do you have going on that requires 30 different LLCs to be set up? And yes, I guess there may be real estate holdings, maybe something like that. But let's just go with Occam's razor and say it's probably, even if you don't want to go all the way to money laundering, it's probably some type of scheme to hide money. That's the only reason you have that many LLCs. There's no other good reason. Sorry. So I don't know what to say, except now we got a guy coming out. You had Tony Belinsky was involved, come out and say, yeah, definitely. Devin Archer is over there saying, like, yeah, no, they're corrupt as hell, and we did all this illicit stuff.
I think he got subpoenaed.
And then you have Hunter Biden being on the board of that one Chinese nuclear company. And then
CFCE.
And then they tried to buy an American nuclear company, which, of course, is a huge violation of all of our national defense laws. And then, you know, God love him, Barack Obama signed an exception and they were allowed to buy it. And then sure as shit they stole the nuclear secrets right away. They had it. They took those secrets back to China with them. No consequences whatsoever. So it's the idea that I think this guy's just lying and full of it is I no, because this actually lines up with all of the background stuff. Like this all fits together and you're going, well, again, if I'm going to play Occam's razor here, the most likely and obvious explanation is that this happened. Like that checks all the boxes. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean I know for sure it happened. But if you're asking me to put money on one or the other, I'm betting heavy on Joe Biden took bribes.
Yeah. It's funny that the video of Biden bragging about firing Shokin is like not even like, it's literally, I don't know, people just like, I don't know if it's a...
Dismiss it.
Yeah, they look right past it like it's right there. Like this actually happened. He's bragging about it right now.
They literally tried to spin it as they got him fired because he wasn't going after the company diligently enough. Like, do you realize the stupid pills you need to swallow in order to actually believe that? If I was in the meeting where somebody said, well, here's the angle we're going to take. We're going to say he just wasn't going after the company enough. Like, you want to say he wasn't going after the company that his son was making $80,000 a month on hard enough, and that's why he wanted him fired. You're telling me you want to sell this to the American people, that he wanted to bring in somebody who was going to go after that company harder in the hopes of bringing them down and thus costing his son this cushy little board position. I would have fired the person for suggesting it. Like, no, you're an idiot. Go away. And instead, they ran with it, and they just kept running with it, and people believe them.
Yeah. Well, people have believed all their nonsense, so why would their frame of reference is different than ours.
It's fair.
They've been convincing people that their nonsense is real for a long time, so they just keep moving with it. Like, well, you might not believe us, but everybody else will. See you tomorrow. All right. Let's switch gears.
Yeah, let's do that.
Twitter was so much fun this weekend.
It was.
So
I got to do my one disclaimer.
Go ahead.
Twitter is a godless hellscape from which humanity will never recover, but every now and then you get things like this and they're wonderful.
Yeah. So first, I don't want to. This shouldn't be part of the show, but I feel like we should probably make it part of this segment here, I guess. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how shocked were you to find out that a Wuhan lab worker was the first person with COVID?
Does the scale go negative? Can I get a negative end of this? So, of course.
I mean, maybe this is a psyop because really it was somebody in North Carolina who got the first COVID thing, and therefore they're just projecting onto Wuhan. But
anything's possible.
It seems this idea that the Wuhan lab of coronaviruses, as Jon Stewart, who had the virus in the name of their hospital, may have been the source of the outbreak, Mr. Hussong. Breaking news at 11, lab leak theory confirmed? Yes, no?
I don't know about confirmed, but I would again say the most obvious and likely explanation, as it has been the entire time that COVID's been in existence.
Yeah, so go check out...
Do you remember when we made this point on the show of what they're claiming is that this bat that literally came in and caused this in Wuhan would be the equivalent of having a SARS coronavirus lab in Syracuse, New York, and claiming that it was caused by an animal in South Carolina. That's the distance between these two things. When you started looking at it, it became so palpably ridiculous that you couldn't believe people were saying it with a straight face.
And this is, I feel like, maybe this and masks are the poster child for the misinformation. Like, there should be no disinformation board. There should be anybody who advocates for that. You can point to the lab leak specifically and be like, what about this?
Right.
Like, I mean, Zero Hedge themselves was taking down their whole Twitter was suspended because they were sharing the possibility like, hey, this Wuhan might have this leak out here, this coronavirus lab. Weird. And was labeled misinformation. And I'm sure that those stories and articles were throttled down for maybe to this day, right? Other than now on Twitter 2.0 here. But this, and again, I say mask too, because I feel like that's been shown to, they never worked, were the things that you could point to. But the lab leak, I feel like this is the one. Everybody can be like, okay, this is why there shouldn't be a government disinformation board. Because if that was, we would have been, and we were, basically. I mean, it kind of served as that even in real time as this story was censored.
Listen, I think the three pillars, if you will, of this is why we were definitively right, and the people that were yelling at us and calling us science deniers and everything else were definitively wrong and will not own up to it. The three pillars are the masks, the COVID origins, and the PCR testing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I can throw natural immunity in there too.
You can throw natural immunity in there too.
There's literally a
lot.
There's a deck. You have a hand of cards that you can just play, I guess.
And it's because even the PCR testing, with Kevin McKernan was talking about it. Now we're finding it at their, and it's it's trace amounts. It's the levels are high. They're the CRT. I don't know.
Cycle thresholds.
The cycle thresholds were higher, but that's what we used to determine if somebody had COVID. And now that we're determining it for this, they say that doesn't count. Like, it's intellectually dishonest. And all it does is it indicates they knew full well that those were bullshit. They knew full well that those COVID tests or the PCRs were set too sensitive, and anybody carrying that virus was going to test positive whether or not they actually were infected by the traditional definition.
Yeah, and so let's transition from lab leak to vaccines here, and this is kind of what I had hoped Twitter could be, in a sense. I'm not sure how smart Peter Hotez is, but I feel like he's probably smarter than me. Just gonna say that in general. I think he's a piece of crap, so it's not like smart people can't do terrible things, but I would like to think that somebody who reached this level of, being basically I think he works at Baylor. He's a vaccinologist. He's made a career out of being a supposed smart guy here. So, but he looks like I don't want to play the whole double talking video here, but maybe I'll play a little bit of it in a little bit. But Peter Hotez, mainstream media darling Peter Hotez, has been on probably every show 10 times over the last 3 years, espousing vaccine propaganda, right? So let me pull up the original tweet here from Professor Peter Hotez, MD, PhD. Spotify has stopped even sort of trying to stem Joe Rogan's vaccine misinformation. It's really true. He's citing a author of a Vice.com article written by, I guess, Anna Merlin. It's just awful. And from all the online attacks I've received after this absurd podcast, it's clear many actually believe this. So this is in reference to Robert F. Kennedy's appearance on Joe Rogan. Now, I have listened to the full 3 hours. I found it engaging. I felt Rogan was trying to hear Kennedy's, absorb
Full
Kennedy's
thoughts.
speech for the first time, right? So I encourage everybody to go listen to that if you have the 3 hours, or if not, break it up. The first hour is really where they kind of talk about the vaccine part, maybe first hour and a half.
Yeah.
Did you listen to it at all?
I got an hour left.
So again, I would encourage everybody to go listen to it. But in response to that, Vice, and RFK, basically that first hour and a half made his case why he thinks vaccines cause autism, basically. So, or at least part of or certain vaccines do. And again, you can go listen to the the podcast yourself and cite the references that or look up the references that he cites.
It was very interesting to hear his perspective on that. And I think that like the summary would be and he's very careful about saying correlation is not causation, but we should be looking at this and you're just not allowed to. And the studies that are being done are being basically buried because they are showing that there might be some causation and nobody ever wants to find out more, which is something that we can say does happen after watching the nightmare scenario around all of COVID stuff. But his is that, there was mercury is in the vaccines and then they put aluminum in the vaccines and then they did all this. And his, I guess, overarching high level view is it's too many, too soon, and in too short of a time frame. And that's what's causing the problems. Not that nobody should ever take a vaccine, not that nobody should do any of this. It's that we have to rethink the schedule. The schedule is way too expanded, and it's too expanded because of the corrupt relationship between the pharmaceutical companies and the FDA that approves them.
Yeah, and that was, I think maybe the triggering point of the interview is if he's elected president, he basically said he's going to stop advertising for drugs on day one and pharmaceutical drugs on, he's going to not allow them to be advertised. And he said he would break the relationship, the captured relationship of the FDA and these pharmaceutical companies. He seems to know a lot about that subject. Mm-hmm. Has written books about that, whatever, is immersed in that. So in response to this, Joe Rogan basically quote tweeted this. Peter, if you claim what RFK Jr. is saying is misinformation, I am offering you $100,000 to the charity of your choice if you are willing to bait him on my show with no time limit. And in response to that, RFK, Peter, let's finally have a respectful, congenial, informative debate that the American people deserve. Say what you will about RFK.
Lunatics.
Say what you will about RFK. Even during the Breaking Points interviews, where he has to know, like, okay, this, he's getting, he's getting raked over the same rake that I always get raked over, basically, whatever. His composure is outstanding, right? Like, sure. He always holds himself together. He never comes across as belittling, like trying to be like make you seem like, what are you talking about? Like, I've already shown whatever, right? So like, and this is a typical response that I would expect out of RFK, but it doesn't end there, right? So, Peter Hotez, like, Joe, you have my email, you have my cell, you have my email. I'm always willing to speak with you. He didn't want to do a debate. He wanted to, go on Joe Rogan and talk. And again, Rogan, he's like, this is a non-answer. I challenge you publicly because you publicly quote tweeted and agreed with that dog shit Vice article. If you're really serious about what you stand for, you have now a massive opportunity for a debate that will reach the largest audience a discussion like this has ever had. If you think someone else is better qualified, suggest that person. So he's basically saying, hey, if you don't want to debate, send me your best,
send
debater.
Me your champion.
Send me whatever you got.
Go.
I'll give $100,000 to that too, right? So, Rogan replies to his own tweet there. He's like, by the way, Peter Hotez, and he tags Peter, I saw this tweet you deleted. And this was a kind of a shot. And this is, again, from Peter Hotez, who has since deleted this tweet here, but I'll read it. It says, be serious, Joe. That's what you throw out for your, and this is, he's referencing the $100,000 that he offered in his debate offer. He's like, be serious, Joe. That's what you throw out for your hunting buddies on a weekend. He's like, a $50 million endowment, which you, Spotify, RFK can easily afford. Not for me, so we can continue making low-cost, patent-free vaccines for the world's poor, preceded by RFK's public apology. So he basically says, hey, give me $50 million for this endowment, and we'll, he's basically asking for $50 million or trying to diminish the $100,000 offer. But the $100,000 offer turned quickly into over $1 million. I feel like, let's see, here it is. No, Chief Nerd. Yeah. So, I mean, Andrew Tate offered $500,000.
Of course he did.
Yeah. Bill Ackman, $150,000. I don't know. You can see this on the list here. There's a, Timcast, a bunch of people offered, $500,000, $250,000, $150,000, $100,000, $100,000. There's quite a buildup here of a pot here for Mr. Hotez's charity of choice, but he's not interested. And therefore, most people on the establishment side have come to Mr. Hotez's defense, basically with the argument of don't give conspiracy theorists a platform, right? Like, don't waste your time. Don't elevate RFK. Don't elevate RFK, a Kennedy. Like, literally, how much more elevation? The dude is, almost everybody knows who. I wouldn't say he has as much name recognition as Trump or Biden, but he's next out of all the people, right? I mean, like, everybody knows who RFK is. So it's kind of a goofy take there. But I'll give credit to Michael Shermer from, I think it's like Skeptic Magazine. He's like, Dear Peter Hotez, I encourage you to debate RFK on Joe Rogan on vaccines, autism, COVID, cell phones, and cancer, and all the rest. He's like, I did a 3.5-hour debate on Joe's show. He's a stand-up guy. Will absolutely be fair. Give you the time you need. Podcasts are the new media center. Why would you pass up 100,000 and tens of millions of viewers to do it? So do it, right? I love the take. That seems like the right answer. Like, or again, I've heard Hotez say he's not a great debater. Okay, well, let's find somebody to do it. Like Mark Cuban offered somebody, I can't remember, but Rogan, after Hotez's mealy-mouthed response, basically goes, I'm going to ask you very clearly, are you willing to debate RFK on my podcast? And this guy, Radio Free Tom, CIA agent, Tom Nichols, he also, again, provided that never debate a conspiracy theorist angle, and Rogan rips this dude. This is the best tweet, I feel like, of the...
he nailed him on that
of
one.
this one. So this is Rogan replying to Tom Nichols. Again, Tom Nichols is admitted CIA agent, just for the record, or former consultant, quote unquote former. Rogan responding to Tom Nichols. He's like, and I guess you should read Tom Nichols'
you gotta
thing.
read Nichols.
So no medical profession should ever agree to do this. Never. It will elevate a conspiracy guy, demands the medical professional background, and will only convince the kooks out there that RFK is right because a real doctor took time to debate him, right? And here's Rogan's response to that. He's like, that would be a great suggestion if you could assure that the industry you were representing wasn't completely captured by heartless monsters who have a history of some of the biggest criminal fines in human history because their deception has cost hundreds of thousands of people their lives. It would be a great suggestion if the industry you were defending, it didn't occasionally look at human beings as an opportunity to generate insane wealth regardless of the tragic consequences. But you can't do that. So maybe it would be a good idea to have a fucking debate. I love it.
I do too.
Fucking love Joe Rogan Twitter is the best Twitter so far. So again, I brought up the pot is 1.5 million, and this is as of 9 a.m. on 6/18, so I'm sure it's higher than that.
Yeah. He ain't gonna debate him.
I will say that Hotez kind of probably burned his bridge with Joe Rogan back a while ago. This was May 9th.
Yep.
Retweeting Tucker Carlson, who he's quote tweeting Tucker Carlson's one of his episodes there. This is Peter Hotez. He's like, I'm quite concerned about the Elon/Tucker link. Then fold in Rogan and RFK, and it becomes a pretty formidable coalition, which I agree with, but I don't agree with neo-fascist leanings. In some ways, darker or perhaps more dangerous than Trump. In my opinion, awful. I just hope Team Biden is preparing. So I totally agree with that. Elon, Tucker, RFK, and Rogan. I mean, that is you can move the RFK part of it. Those three have massive influence, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they can steer a conversation in a direction. Whether or not they can,
persuade or change,
get an outcome that they want, they can clearly make people look at something that they want people to look at. And so Rogan quote tweets Peter Hotez there. He's like, are you sure I'm not part of a coalition with neo-fascist leanings? Seems like this is what you really think or what you're projecting the masses. So Hotez has already burned Rogan. Rogan was probably just waiting for, not waiting like with this, but as soon as he saw Hotez share that Vice article, Rogan was like, this clown is done.
So I think Peter Hotez is a stunning example of what happens when you live a life without consequence. Because Peter Hotez did go on Joe Rogan's show to advocate for the vaccines, and Joe Rogan, without even getting into the science of the vaccines, essentially embarrassed him with, what about just good health? What about exercise? What about nutrition? What about vitamins? What about taking care of yourself? And of course, if you don't know what Peter Hotez looks like, he is not in shape. He looks like he has not exercised one day in his entire life. He looks like a dork. He wears a bow tie. He's got floppy hair. He's kind of...
So I rewatched the Hotez interview on Joe Rogan. And so I have it loaded up here. I'm not going to play it, but there's a part in there where he goes, he's already talked about his diet is terrible, how he doesn't really exercise. And Hotez is like, well, I travel a lot. So, and Joe Rogan basically says, okay, the first thing I do when I travel is I go to the gym. And so he's basically countering all this Hotez, excuses of why he's unhealthy and whatnot. And at one point, Hotez being like, "Oh, I take my dog out for a run," and Rogan's like, "Run?" Like literally, like what? Like there's zero chance you take your dog out for a run. And I thought that was the like, it just slipped out. Like I'm sure he was like, it was like okay,
he's not used to being called on his bullshit, and that's where Joe Rogan was like, "Well, why do you eat that stuff?" And Hotez tried to go for the sympathy angle of, "Well, that's my thing with my autistic daughter is we go to Wendy's and we get burgers and Frosties." And Joe goes, "Okay, but then why not exercise after, or why not make that more of a rare thing and change some stuff?" And of course, he didn't have an answer because that is the major problem with American healthcare is it's all pills. And it's not, there's no focus on nutrition. There's no focus on health or exercise. It's just what pill do we take, what shot do we take, and how do we get a Band-Aid on this so that the pharmaceutical company can make money because they don't make money if you're healthy. They make money when you're sick. Now, the other example of this where I'm going to say this is why Hotez has been living without consequence because he tweeted that after Joe Rogan had him on his show and gave him an opportunity to advocate to the single largest media audience in this country. Joe Rogan's podcast is more watched and more viewed and more shared than anything else.
Yeah, it's like 10 million downloads each episode. It's right. Crazy.
It's insane how much bigger it is. So he has Peter Hotez on, and Peter Hotez, they're amicable. Obviously, they don't see eye to eye on everything. And then Peter Hotez, a couple months later, accuses him of being a neo-fascist, and Joe Rogan doesn't respond. Because Joe Rogan didn't go on Twitter at that point. He's always been advocate of like, I just don't go on. He's like, I might share something, but I never read anything after that. He said because essentially somebody explained it to him as, I'm going to butcher this, but it's just people talking shit. Like it's you and your buddies making jokes
totally
about
is.
people,
Yeah.
except they can hear you.
Yeah.
That's it. It's nobody means anything. It's just people are talking. So he doesn't go on it. Now, Peter Hotez is used to being able to run his mouth. So now this one comes on and he gets to say it again and be like, oh my God, this is misinformation. They're not even trying. And now all of a sudden, Joe Rogan's like, listen, mother. And he's totally unprepared on how to respond because he never thought in a million years Joe Rogan was going to come after him publicly on Twitter because of this comment. So for him to turn around and go, all right, put your money where your mouth is. What do you want? Come on and debate him. If you think this is, and of course, Peter Hotez is now in a panic because he knows he can't win that debate.
Yeah. And like I said, maybe he's right that he's a terrible debater. And I do think, your expertise in the area of law shows that, I would guarantee that there have been cases won by the better debater.
Of course.
Than the facts, right?
Of course.
So it matters. But Joe Rogan basically says, hey, if it's not you, tell me who. Who is it?
Right.
And maybe there's people out there. And I will say I'll give Vinay Prasad credit because he basically said we shouldn't be attacking RFK. What we should be doing is let's get together with RFK and let's find a study that we can both agree on the parameters about, and let's conduct a study and find out the answers, right? That seems like the most logical thing. Like, let him be part of the process.
Sure.
Hey, let's create parameters of the study that we both can agree on, and let's see what happens.
Right. It's the idea that that's a neo-fascist leaning is the most insane thing I've ever heard of. Like, no, you want to know what's fascist apparently in America today is wanting to conduct studies just to make sure that the worst case scenario isn't coming true. Wow, Nazi. Wanting to like have an open debate between two experts and just say like, look, hash it out, make it civil, let's get to the bottom of it. It could be adversarial but civil at the same time, and you could pick whoever you want to come in and represent you.
Yeah, and honestly, we could take that whatever 1.5 million plus and use it to fund the study, and then take the study, if there's findings, direct the money, the leftover monies to vaccine research, to victims, to people who are injured. There's plenty of ways to make this work where everybody can have at least an outcome. Listen, on both sides, people are gonna, if whatever the study said, there were people who won't believe it, and on either way. But I think there's, and I think I'm one of these people. I get blanketed as a conspiracy theorist, but I'm vaccinated, my kid's vaccinated, whatever. It was 1993 and I was 1972. So we didn't have the same kind of problems that I had. Right.
Yeah.
So, but the last couple years have made me reevaluate the idea. I never really gave much credit to listen, I was always aware of the people claiming autism was from vaccines, bunch of testimonials from parents who'd be like, this day he was fine, she was fine. They go in the next day, next week, they can't talk. They're different. Right. And so it's hard. I mean, observational evaluation is part of learning. And so like that shouldn't be dismissed. And if there's a way again, if Vinay Prasad's assessment is accurate and there is a way to set up a parameter to test these, let's figure it out. Like, there's enough money on the table now where I think that could happen. You know, we always talked about how there was no mask studies or there was no ivermectin studies or no hydroxychloroquine studies because there was no money to fund the studies. And now it seems like we have a bunch of people who are willing to kind of fund this study. Let's make it happen.
And the problem was when they did start doing those studies and they came out like, hey, we conclusively showed it doesn't work. And you're like, okay, fine. And then you read it and you're like, no, you set this up to fail. You didn't use it right. You used the wrong amounts.
And that's the important part of having RFK involved in the parameters, right? Because then he's gonna see the red flags. I'm assuming, like I'm assuming that he has parts of the process that he could critique along the way and be like, okay, well, as long as we get to this part and we don't do this, then we should have a more fair result. He seems reasonable to. I don't think anybody's ever presented it to him this way, but I mean, that seems like something he would buy into, a study that was set up with his involvement. It seems like a way to kind of at least scratch the itch. Whether or not it's actually going to find an ultimate conclusion, it seems like that's the best way forward. And whatever we find, we can expand upon one way or the other.
I was telling my neighbor this the other day of like, the problem is, having gone down this road so far, is I am now skeptical of everything.
Yeah, me too.
And and I hate being this way, but I don't know how else to respond to how blatant what I have seen is.
Yeah, but if you weren't, you would be foolish, I feel like, right?
I agree with that. There's no, we were talking about, he goes, you were right. You were ahead of the curve on that one. I was like, listen, I don't blame you or anybody else for not listening to me, because there's no reason I should have been right. There's no way that we should have been correct on as much as we were correct on. I don't blame people for dismissing me. I don't blame people for like not wanting to hear it. I get it. There's no reason that I should have been right when I'm directly contradicting the leading epidemiologist in the country. There's no way that I should have been right about masks. There's no way we should have been right about PCR testing. There's no way we should have been right about the source, about natural immunity, about the vaccine and the predicament that it was going to cause. There's no way we should have been right. And the fact that we were is the concerning part. Because there's no way that we should have been right. I mean, I think our record is like 6-1 on major issues. I was wrong about population density. I thought it was going to play a bigger factor than it did. I own that. My bad. But it's noticing the tricks that they did. It's noticing the sleight of hand that they continually pull, and then I'm not falling for it again. So now you've earned my skepticism. So when you come out and say this, I'm going to go, well, wait a minute. So in light of this, look, I understand that nobody wants to hear this because we all vaccinated our children. Most of us did. And we don't want to face the reality that, holy shit, what if this does cause this? What if there are these harms? And some people do have very negative reactions to vaccines. I used to be dismissive of this as anybody. And I used to make the joke, I think I stole it from a comic, my bad, but I'm not making money off of it, of the major problem in the country is you have, on one hand, all the leading scientists saying that vaccines don't cause autism, and on the other hand, you have Jenny McCarthy saying it does, and people get that decision wrong. My bad. But it still holds true now that it is weird how much more prevalent autism is now than it once was. It is weird that in other countries, they don't have the same schedule, and if they did, they got away from it. Like Japan and some other countries changed the schedule because they noticed these adverse reactions and at least concluded or believe there's a link. So they don't do it as much. It's weird that in this country, vaccines don't need long-term safety data ahead of time. It's weird that a hepatitis B vaccine is on the recommendation schedule for children. Like, that's a hard thing to get. And somehow, like, it's weird that recommended schedule, meaning that it's weird that they have liability immunity for anything that makes it on that vaccine schedule. That's weird. And we should all be a little more skeptical of this, because if any industry has ever demonstrated that they are not worthy of our blind trust, it is pharmaceutical industry. I mean, opioids is just the most glaring example of their indifference to human life. They knew what they were doing, but the money was good, so they just kept lying, and they got a slap on the wrist. They don't care. And the idea that you want to trust them, I understand, because I did want to trust them for the longest time, but I don't confuse what I want with reality. And now looking at the reality of the situation, I don't know. Is there, like, that makes sense that if they're putting mercury in it and their excuse is, well, it's a different kind of mercury, like that doesn't hold water. If there's aluminum in it, if they're doing all of this stuff and they're not running the studies, that's a problem to me. that is where I start to go, well, wait a minute, why don't you want to, like, well, we're not going to give them air. Like, no. But if you're right, this should be really, really easy to disprove, that if you do some and don't do others, then you're good. Like, well, that would be unethical. Like, well, no, not if you have volunteers that are giving you informed consent, where you're telling them flat out, hey, we think this is really going to harm you by not taking this. And they go, no, it's okay. Because I got news for you. You'd get people that have woken up from all this COVID stuff and go, man, what if that's right? Because I'm going to feel like a dick.
And that's exactly what I feel like this would benefit. Because I think there's people, like me or even more, like to me, I've already gone to okay, well, nothing coming from them. Like I don't believe them. I'll let the information come and I'll reassess. But right now, I don't believe anybody who's coming from the public health sector, because I watched them lie to me for 3 straight years.
Without a second thought.
Without a second thought, and still has not admitted that they were wrong.
Not only lie, but attack anybody that dared even question it. And they went for personal attacks and silencing instead of debating. And that's where the red flag was for me. And then it was their refusal to acknowledge their mistakes. Ventilating was a bad decision almost every time it was done. Now, it's okay that you did it. I understand. But if you're still advocating for it, it tells me you're not willing to learn and adapt, because that's a problem. So if I have a kid right now, I can't promise you I would get that child vaccinated for anything, because my trust in public health and in the pharmaceutical industry is so low that I literally just want to look into every single aspect of this and go, now I'm going to find out. Because here's the thing. I know you're pushing bullshit on me, but I can tolerate some. I don't know that I'm going to, the risk benefit, I now have to analyze the risk.
It would be a different
risk benefit
argument if you knew that the vaccines or medications or whatever the pharma treatments were effective, right? And you're like, okay, these are safe and effective, and somebody was shadily making money on the side because they were so good and effective. That'd be one, like, there could be some shadiness going involved, like with government, whatever, but at least the medicine worked. But we don't even know that that's the case anymore. So, and I guess that's what when people like Peter Hotez and all the people who come to his defense basically saying don't debate conspiracy theorists, people like me who have come to the idea that vaccines might be dangerous in recent years just make me think that they're probably dangerous now, because these guys don't want to defend their position. So I'm on board with the Vinay Prasad angle. Maybe we can rally this money together, and Vinay and RFK can, and maybe they can get all the Geert Vanden Bosches and the Robert Malones of the world all together, fund this actual study, and let's find out once and for all. And, if RFK is involved with the parameters being set for the study, it would be difficult for him to contest the results, right? So
that's it. You could settle this. It's so simple to settle this out. But the fact that you don't want to tells me you're afraid of what the results might be.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not sure what's going on with our camera here, so I'm going to sign off here with anything you'd like to leave with the folks with until next Monday?
Touch grass.
Touch grass, as always.
And happy Juneteenth.
Yes. And happy belated Father's Day. Do you do belated Father's Days? Is that the thing? Sure. Happy belated Father's Day to all the fathers out there. All right. On that note, we will see you all again next Monday.